All right, family, and we are live. Sister Alima, do you want to start us off? Because I normally start the tea talks off.
Well, peace and love, family. Welcome to, oh my God, I forgot the name of the book club. Resurgence of the African Mind. I'm sorry, it's been a hectic, crazy week. Resurgence of the African Mind book club. Of course, you all know we are starting with Blueprint. I forgot the name of the book club. Resurgence of the African Mind. I'm sorry, it's been a hectic, crazy week. It's an echo.
That's not mine.
I don't know why it's doing that.
I think someone just muted their the video. But go ahead, sis.
Okay, well, so today, you know, everybody, we're going to talk about chapter 1. Chapter 1 is what is power. We have other people on the panel today. I am Alima La Poete, author of Bookclub. Of course, you all know we are starting. Why is it doing that?
Hold up. Whoever is on
Resurgence of the African Mind. I'm sorry, it's been
there's a delay. So please, whoever has their YouTube video up and running, please mute your YouTube video or mute your mic. And a matter of fact, we're all going to mute our mics. Let's do that. So I'm muting my.
Okay, as I was saying, family, we are starting with chapter 1. What is Power? In Blueprint for Black Power by Dr. Amos Wilson. We want everyone that's on the panel today to introduce themselves. Once again, I am Alima Njai, aka Alima La Poete, author of Perceptions of a Misplaced African, Volume 1. If you don't have that, you should cop that. It's on Amazon or Kindle. And so we're going to roll on down and let Sister L introduce herself.
Sister L. LA. Sister L.
Okay, well, we're going to move on to Dr. Maat.
All right, so peace and power, family, or we would say Amani or Abibi Fahode. Welcome to the first RAM Book Club meeting. My name is Dr. Maat, also known as Dr. Deanna Bailey, and I am the co-founder of Ed Anime Productions and the executive producer of Meltrek. Sister Camille.
Yes.
Introduce yourself.
All right. Can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am.
Hey, family. It's an honor to be here. My name is Camille Gaynor Jones. I'm a musician, a drummer, producer. I'm also in the process of finishing up writing 2 books, one on the music business, and one is a technique book for drummers. And I'm also in the process.
Is it my computer or did she freeze?
I think she just froze. She froze up a little bit.
For system about now. Am I good?
Oh,
You're good now.
Okay. Did you hear everything I said?
No.
The last part we heard, you were writing a book on
about drumming
techniques.
Oh yes, I'm writing 2 books. One is a instructional book for the drum set, and the other one is dealing with, you know, the music business and the mindset for young people so that they can navigate history, as well as putting some Black empowerment and instruction as far as being an African artist.
Excellent.
And I'm in the music business.
Excellent, sis. Well, we're happy to have you. And I see we have Brother Knowledge Born a lot in the building. Peace to you, King. How you doing, brother? Please introduce yourself to the listening audience.
Peace and Black Power family of Hoodier. Definitely honored to be here on this illustrious panel today. My name is Knowledge Born Allah, host of Do Knowledge Radio. Definitely here for one of the greatest books ever written.
That's right.
By our brother, Dr. Amos Wilson. So I'm glad for the resurgence of the African Mind Book Club. I'm feeling that title 1000%. We got the authors on, we got the writers, we got the scholars, we got the music, we got the vibe, we got the balance, we got everything. So I'm definitely happy to be here. I know our sister Alima was tired of me harassing her, like, hey, you know, did we start? I didn't get the link. What's happening? What we gonna do?
I was ready. I was harassing Dr. Maat, like, come on, sis, come on.
She was. She was. She kept me.
Hey, I was studying wrong. You know, reading is fundamental. You know, I read my chapter, but reading is fundamental. Hey, the date, I was like, oh man, my bad. So I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
And look, do the knowledge. Look, knowledge born Allah. I want to congratulate you on your Black Power Award nomination. You were a nominated.
Congratulations, brother.
Yeah, so congratulations on your Black Power Award nomination, King.
I appreciate that. It's definitely an honor to be recognized. You know, normally you get the people in the back of the class, you know, you get them for clowning. You don't get them for working. You see what I'm saying? I couldn't be in the front of the class because I was in the back of the class working. You see what I'm saying? So it's good that they nominated the janitor. You see what I'm saying? The janitor of African liberation. You see what I'm saying? So I'm good.
Excellent. Excellent. So, all right, so we're going to begin with chapter 1 of Blueprint for Black Power. And the name of that chapter is What is Power? But before we begin, I wrote down a few notes, a few things that I wanted to express to you all before we begin. Number one, or firstly, in 1903, W.E.B. Du Bois in his book, The Souls of Black Folks, said that Black people possess a double consciousness. And then 50 years later, you had Frantz Fanon in his book, Black Skin, White Mask. He agreed with W.E.B. Du Bois, and he then described the roots of this double consciousness. And then Dr. Amos Wilson, a decade or two later, in his book, The Developmental Psychology of the Black Child, stated that Black people have a schizoid nature. So right now, we're working with a double consciousness. We have a European mind, and we have an African mind. Now, there are a plethora of factors that have contributed to or precipitated to our double consciousness. And it can be easily argued that the profound factor is the miseducation of Black people. So the purpose of this club, the RAM Book Club, the resurgence of the African mind, I mean, the title speaks for itself. We're trying to rid ourselves of this double consciousness and restore our African consciousness through proper education, which calls for us to study the works of our great historians and our scholars. When Sister Alima and I, and this, let me tell you how this all came about. Sister Alima and I were actually on the telephone, and we were talking about the Blueprint for Black Power. And we were like, man, this is a thick book. I mean, this is like 800, almost 900 pages of information. And both of us had the book in our possessions, and we both read it, you know, in spurts, but we never read it from cover to cover. So Sister Alima said, look, man, you know, how about we get together and we just read the book cover to cover? And I said, you know what, we could do this, you know, and let's start a book club where we have brothers and sisters go through this book. So we're going to dedicate 31 weeks to read this book. We're going to read a chapter. We're going to read one chapter per week. All right. And so when we put this out there, I think Alima posted on her Facebook page, and I shared the post. And there were a lot of sisters who expressed interest in joining this book club. And I was thoroughly excited, you know, to see a lot of sisters, you know, happy about joining our book club, because I often think of that quote, you know, when you teach a man, you teach an individual, but when you teach a woman, you teach a nation. So I was happy to hear or to see that a lot of sisters expressed interest in joining our book club. You know, and, you know, this is a powerful text that we're starting with, the Blueprint for Black Power. It's a powerful text. And I think that this text should be regarded as the Bible for Black people. I remember that Dr. Ben wrote a book years ago called The Need for a Black Bible, right? So in this book, he was saying that we need a book that will inspire and empower Black people. And to me, in my opinion, that is exactly what Blueprint for Black Power does for our people. And so let's hop right in it. We want to discuss chapter 1. If you don't have your book, please inbox me. My Facebook name is now Deanna Bailey, since Facebook deactivated my dr.maat page. Please inbox me, and I have autographed copies available for you. I have copies autographed by our brother Sababu. He autographed, and he's the editor and publisher of Blueprint for Black Power. So if you don't have a copy of Blueprint for Black Power, please inbox me, Deanna Bailey, on Facebook, so that I can get a copy of Blueprint for Black Power to you.
YouTube.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. So I had to meet. But so go ahead, sis. You want to start with chapter 1, or do you want to discuss a little bit about the author, or do you want to go right in?
I think we can go right in. I wanted to mention a couple things from the foreword before we, a lot of people don't read the foreword, but I wanted to discuss a few things from the foreword. And, it poses the question, basically, why did they write this? And it says, the question is, what we want to know is, why do whites oppress us? By what means are we oppressed by them? And how may we end our oppression? So those are 3 questions that are seeking to be answered from these readings. I highlighted a couple things, and I wanted to read this because I thought it was deep. And it says, color, its intensity, has been accepted as the measure of God's favor. From blessedness to cursedness, from brilliant giftedness to dim-wittedness, from cold calculation to warm gullibility, from vulnerable recessiveness to threatening domination. Therefore, the darker ones, the darkest race, is destined to grasp at the shorter end of the stick, to remain unaccepted and unassimilated. And I thought that was interesting. It's saying that the Black people that, we can be viewed as either really good or really bad, but we end up getting the shorter end of the stick nonetheless. There was a few other things I saw in the forward, but we can go ahead and move on to chapter 1, if that's okay with everybody.
No, sis, go ahead and read some more from the forward, because I have some stuff highlighted from the forward myself.
Okay.
Where it says, I'm on page 2. It says that white man oppresses African people because he possesses the power to do so. The Black man is oppressed because he has not developed the power to prevent his oppression. His oppression will end when the power of his oppressor is countered by his own power. So then he said, therefore, if the Black man is to prevent his victimization by the white man, he must neutralize, balance, or destroy the power differential which favors his domination by the white man. So basically, he's saying that in order for us, that white people do the things, that we complain about mass incarceration, we complain about poverty, we complain about a lot of things, and we say, well, this isn't changing. Well, it's not changing because we don't have the power to change them. So until we neutralize, can you please mute your mic?
Closed and opened.
Yeah, somebody needs to mute them. Right, there we go.
Exactly. So until we change the power differential between us and them, they will forever continue to oppress and to dominate us. And so that's what kind of stuck out to me in the forward, that he's basically saying, look, these people are doing these things to you because they possess the power to do so. So until you amass power or go after power, then things will forever be the same. So that's what kind of stuck out to me in the forward.
And to continue on from what you were just reading, I had highlighted right up under that. It says the Black man, the African race, must study power, its sources, its acquisition, its increase, its preservation, and its application to the successful achievement of his liberation from white oppression and to enhance his autonomous quality of life. So what they're saying is that we have to study power and what it is in order to understand it, because it's one thing to know that you're being oppressed, but it's another thing to understand why you're being oppressed. And I think that we don't really understand why we're being oppressed. And so, yeah, this is definitely going to help us. And if anybody else, Sister Camille or Brother Dugan.
Well, on that point that you made about understanding power, I also think we don't, as a group of people, study them as they have studied us.
Yes.
So we don't fully grasp the depth of their evilness, and I just think we don't study them. We need to study them. We need to study history and realize that that they're still capable of doing all the things that they were doing in the past. A lot of people tend to think of it as in the past, but just that the system has updated itself. It's like a computer. It updates and it finds other ways of oppressing you. So, and since we're not astute in those areas and we don't study them, that's how they're always able to keep a leg up on us. Because, and also, I believe we're still the same people we were thousands of years ago, where we welcomed people and helped them, and we still do that today to our detriment.
Absolutely.
That's very true. And to piggyback off what Sister Camille just said, why do you think they're able to, why do you think they know us so well? They're able to market to us so well?
Right.
Because they have studied us. They know our habits. They know our characteristics. They know our mindset.
Yes, they have think tanks. You know, they have people to get together and they, you know, Harvard college educated people that get together and come up with these laws and institutions and things.
Facts.
So it's not just, you know, it's not haphazard like a lot of us think. It's done by design, and it's social engineering.
Exactly, sis.
Absolutely. 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 So this book, Blueprint for Black Power, was published in 1998. Dr. Amos Wilson, it says in the editor's note on page 3 that Dr. Amos Wilson joined the pantheon of the ancestors on Saturday, January the 14th, 1995. So this book was published posthumously, meaning that it was published after he passed, and it was published by his business partner, Brother Sababu. Brother Sababu helped Dr. Amos Wilson found the African Global Info Systems, and he is alive and well today. He's in New York City, still publishing some of the manuscripts of Dr. Amos Wilson. And so I keep in touch with that brother. I at least touch base with that brother maybe once a week. And so he's actually working on another book of Dr. Amos Wilson entitled The Psychology of Self-Hate, which should be by the fall. So what else did I want to say about Brother Sabahu? I think that was it. I think that was it. So it's published posthumously. Oh, and I wanted to add that we complain. A lot of brothers and sisters, when they look at this book, they say, oh my goodness, it's $55. And we complain about it being $55. When I asked Brother Sababu, I asked him, I said, Baba, that's what I call him. I said, Baba, I said, how much did it cost you guys to produce this book? He said $600,000 worth of research went into creating Blueprint for Black Power. Wow. So once he told me that, I'm like, how dare we complain about paying $55 for this powerful manuscript? You know, and it cost Brother Sababu and Dr. Amos Wilson, I'm sorry, he actually gave me a range. He said it cost between $600,000 and $800,000 to produce this book. Wow. So,
wow. Yeah, I can believe it.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. So let's get into chapter 1, family. Let's get into chapter 1. What is power? So can someone read the definition of power? What is power?
Straight from the book?
Yeah, let's go straight from the book and let's build. So what is power?
Okay, well, the definitions, I didn't get to read the first chapter because I didn't get my book till Thursday. So, you know, I didn't want to miss the chat though.
That's okay, Queen.
We got your book. We got your back. Sister Alima, because I had my stuff all highlighted.
Yeah, see, I feel bad, man.
Okay, so it's broken up into the first 3 chapters. So I have highlighted, says power is a chameleon. It takes on the texture of its environment. Power comes with being, with interactive existence, with being alive. It is the essence of life and the motive force of growth and development, and of the adaptability of living things to environmental changes and demands. Power refers to the ability to do, the ability to be, the ability to prevail. To be powerless is to be willless, impotent, and lifeless, without effect or influence, to be nothing of no account. Thus, we concur with Rollo May when he contends, and then Rollo May says that power is essential for all living things. Man, in particular, cast on this barren crust of earth aeons ago, with the hopes and requirement that he finds he must use his powers and confront opposing forces at every point in his struggle with the earth and with his fellows.
So what was powerful to me when you read that is that power takes on various shapes and forms. It depends on your environment. And so he goes on to explain on page 8 that he said power may conceivably refer to the ability to achieve a desired goal or to the ability to willfully resist or overcome certain social and environmental conditions imposed on oneself by others, or the ability to impose on others against their will outside of their awareness, certain social, environmental circumstances, and behavioral demands. And then he says that there are 2 types of power. So So you have a power can be defined as the ability to, or the ability, or the, like, I'm sorry, power can be defined as the ability to, power to, he said, or power over. So it's like it's two types of power. Either it's the ability to, or you may have power over. And so he gets into explaining some of that, sis. Some of that. But wait a minute, I want to go back to page 6 because I did not like this, Sister Alina. He said the pursuit of power is viewed as unworthy of virtual persons and the desire to possess it as sinful. So basically, we're not conditioned to seek power. When we go to church, we're never, not even church. I'm just going to say it now, spiritual centers.
Yes.
We're never taught to seek power, right? That's why Dr. Amos Wilson said the pursuit of power is viewed as unworthy of virtuous persons and the desire to possess it as sinful. He said, therefore, many among the powerless and poor feel compelled to find their powerlessness and poverty the emblematic signs of their godliness and redemptive salvation. So I automatically thought about church. Like, you hear things like the meek will inherit, right? You hear things like the meek will inherit the earth.
Exactly.
And they glorify suffering. It's like suffering is glorified. And we think that we have to suffer because one day, we're going to make it into the promised land, or we're going to make it. And I'm not being, facetious right now. I'm being dead serious. We're conditioned to think that we're supposed to suffer, and that we are powerless, and that it's okay to be powerless. So you hear us, we submit to this God, right? And we say that this God is all powerful, but we never talk about the power of man. You never taught that man and woman are also power. So we're never conditioned to seek it. We're taught through church to submit to power, not to seek power. And that's what I thought about when I read that passage.
In chapter 6, paragraph 3, towards the bottom, he says, the oppressed and downtrodden have been traumatized by the abuse of power by their powerful oppressors, often come to perceive power itself as inherently evil, as you just stated, as by nature corrupting, and therefore as something to be eschewed, denied, and renounced. So we have been so oppressed to the point that we view power as a negative thing because the way that power is enforced upon us.
Right.
So therefore we don't seek it.
Right. And we're like, God don't like ugly and things like that. That's taking the power or the responsibility of caring for oneself away from the self and putting it on and something else. So,
Exactly.
We do that, that's strictly, that's the church for me all day. I can't, every day I hear people say something like that, just taking away their own power, and not everything that they talk about comes from God, or God is good, or that's God, or, it's just, where your power is looked at, well, your lack of no power, and the outside entity is one guiding you, and whatever he feels is correct is what you should have, and you should be happy to have that.
Exactly.
Because you're one of God's children. You're saved, and what's the other crazy thing they be saying? I'm blessed and
highly favored.
Oh God, yeah, all that kind of stuff.
With no power though. With no power.
No, but I'm blessed and highly favored.
Yes, we go, we pray, and we hoop and holler, and we come back out to the same madness. And it's crazy. You know what? we're not gonna go on a tangent, because all I'm gonna say is that your spiritual system should empower you, not disempower you.
Yes, your spiritual system. Exactly, sis. This doesn't empower us because it's not in the form that we originally made it in.
Exactly. It wasn't designed to empower us. It was designed to empower the people who imposed it upon us. So, yes. All right. So moving on, I think at the bottom of page 6, it says that power can be beneficial or harmful. So power power can be harmful, and it also can be beneficial. I guess it depends on how power is used. So I want to bring, I definitely would want to bring that to light. You
want to go into power over and power to, explain the difference?
Yeah, go ahead, sis.
Okay, so power It says power as the power to includes the definition of power as the ability to get what one wants, as the capacity of some persons to produce intended and unforeseen effects on others, or as the ability a person or group has to produce intended effects upon the world around them to realize their purposes within it, whatever the purposes happen to be. Power as the power over, in contrast to as power to, emphasizes the use of power by one person or group to constrain or restrict the possibilities or options of another person or group. Power over refers to power that is exercised over an agent, a person or group, when he is not able to act freely, that is, with a full set of possibilities available to him. So it kind of seems like we suffer from both.
Yes, we do.
Yes. And also back on page 7, sis, there's a paragraph where it says, there are many blacks who have been convinced by racist propaganda that supreme power is divinely deeded to dominant whites. They therefore suffer anxiety attacks and feel as if they are blasphemously rebelling against God himself if they even for a moment seriously dare consider conspiring to wrest power from the hands of their oppressors.
Ooh, that's deep. I had that highlighted. That's deep.
I had that highlighted too. I had that highlighted also.
I like that.
Yeah. That says it. That puts it all in a nutshell for me. That's it.
It does. And being that we were talking about religion, if you go back to why it was actually even used, it was used as a control mechanism, you know, and it was used to instill that fear and used as a power tool to control the masses. So it makes sense why we would view going against rebelling, you know, as if we would be rebelling against God himself.
Right. Yeah, that's fear. That's you know, we're fearful. We're like spooky and, you know, all that old spooky stuff up in the sky. It's just like, and grown people believe this. I've had men come up to me, grown men like in their 60s, tell me I came from his rib. I'm like, really? You believe that?
No.
You know, all that kind of crazy stuff.
It's sad, you know. We've been so conditioned, so it's just sad.
Work to be done.
I wanted to add.
Oh, go ahead, brother. All right now.
Yeah, come on,
ladies first. I
was waiting for the brother to talk, so I'm excited now.
I wanted to, you know, it was on page 7.
Yeah.
It's something that we speak about all the time. It said we must be ever conscious of the fact that the establishment, whatever rewards it gives us, will also, if necessary to maintain its control, kill us. So if we look at, you know, it's just like that Greek Trojan horse. You see what I'm saying? Like the whole thing and its significance and how it works and how this Trojan horse is set off in the mind of our people. You see what I'm saying? With this this inclination towards Euro correctness. You see what I'm saying? So the standard of behavior, the standard of beauty, all of the facets of the society as we as African people hold dear. And, you know, has, you know, been hit with this Trojan horse. So just like if you got a Trojan horse virus in your computer, it destroys your computer. So something that you're seeing as a gift, that you think you're getting a gift from this European, is, you know, in its application upon further study is, you know, for our destruction. So nothing that this European can give us will ever put us in a position of power or empowerment, regardless of how it may look. You see what I'm saying? Is ultimately a sign, you know, by its design, you know, for control to kill us. So I just wanted to add that.
Yes, thank you, brother. I agree.
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely. And going back to Sister Alima, page 8. So we said that there are different forms of, or not different forms of power. There are 2 types of power: the ability to, and the power. Power can be defined as power as the ability to, or power as the power over. And so, like Sister Alima said, we as Black people are victims of both types of power. Not only they had the power to, they had the power to do whatever, and they also had power over us. So I just wanted to say, Sister Alima, I agree with you. I concur with you that we are victims of both types of power. So now let's get into the different forms of power.
Yes.
Dr. Amos Wilson listed maybe 5 or 6, I didn't count, but maybe 5 or 6 forms of power. So let's go through that. I don't want to say briefly, but let's build on that. And the first form of power is force as a power. And he defined that as, he says, power as force involves the exercise of biological and physical means to prevent another person or group from doing whatever he or it prefers to do, or to get something to happen to the person or group that he or it would prefer it did not. Okay, so Wartenberg used the definition provided by Wartenberg as to, you know, what power is when it's used as an instrument of force. Go ahead, Sister Lima. Somebody want to say something?
Yeah, well, let's go ahead and talk about force as power. But as you said, it exercises the biological and physical means. So I could technically, you know, I could have power over somebody just because I was born in a role that gives me power over you. You see what I'm saying? Or I could actually physically have power over you, which in our instance, we're in a society that both actually is into play when you think about it. I had some things that I had highlighted here. The second paragraph, the strategic and tactical purpose of instrumental force is to limit or eliminate the subordinate individual or group's capacity to act in certain ways. So they're saying that force is used in order to limit what it is that we can do. Does anybody want to expound upon that? Maybe examples of how force is used to eliminate our ability to act?
Yeah,
yes.
I think, okay, go ahead, brother.
No, go ahead, sis.
Well, you know, the police department, that, you know, that's one way they use force to keep us from speaking up again about our rights. You know, killing us in the street, you know, makes people fearful to protest and to stand up for themselves. And that's a tactic that's been used, you know, since we came over here in these slave ships. You know, all the brutality, the hangings, the maiming, you know, boiling you in oil, tar and feathering you in front of everyone, ripping, you know, the biggest male apart, rape, you know, just mayhem, just keeping you in a constant state of mayhem and murder.
Brother?
Now, the key thing for me looking at it was instrument. Now, we can look at something directly, you know, that's physically. Now, instrument can be a tool that's used. You see what I'm saying? A tool, an environment, all of these things. You see what I'm saying? So one of the greatest powers that are used against African people is how we view ourselves. You see what I'm saying? So self-conception and perception leads to the diameter of your thinking and also all of your future plans. So if you're seen as subordinate to a power structure, you don't identify it as a man. His gifts of Dr. Bobby E. Wright was, he said, you know, it wasn't the system of racism, white supremacy, it was black people versus white people. So you can conceive in your mind an enemy that you can think about every day, but if that same enemy has painted a picture of themselves as infallible and in the standard of the chief good, so you won't look at you have to look at yourself as the opposite, because we deal in those realms of polarity. So if this is the chief good, then you must be the chief evil. So now you're bombarded with images, you know, pictorially, visually, of you being a criminal. So you deserve whatever's supposed to come to you, because we know right and wrong. So if you do wrong, there are consequences. You see what I'm saying? So an instrument that's being used as a tool, you know, as we were speaking about propaganda, that same type of tool, you know, being used, that's one of the largest tools. And, you know, that was one of the reasons for the platform to bring out and have that resurgence of the African mind visually, you know, psychologically, and also through the fine art of speech, because we can have a perception of someone in their mind and we never met them. So, you know, we can bring them in and we can dialogue and, you know, change those perceptions among us. And also, you know, an instrument or a tool can be a hidden hand. So we're arguing amongst one another And, you know, the outside forces are controlling, you know, how far we're going to go and whether or not we unite based off of that. You see what I'm saying? So I see those two as tools in regards to force as power.
So yeah, let me and see that I think that you're more so, brother, speaking on force as manipulation, where we go into propaganda and stuff like that. So that was beautiful. When we talk about the psychological assaults that have psychological, you know, against Black people, and the type of the use of propaganda, you know, to manipulate us to behave in such a way. But I'm just thinking more of, I think with this force as a power, we're talking about a biological and physical means to restrict us. And so I'm trying to think of other examples other than the police, which would be like a physical, or since we said biological, we can go into reproduction, the eugenics movement, you know, to limit our ability or to restrict our ability to reproduce. Maybe we could talk about the eugenics movement or birth control and contraceptives, this whole push for population control. To me, that is the exercise of biological, right? A biological means of preventing us to reproduce and to continue, you know, to continue life. So I think that here what he's talking about, like a biological and physical means of preventing us to do something or to limit us to act in certain ways. So I think
force, you know,
I'm thinking
using the military,
right? Military, police,
the justice system.
Yes, justice system. What else would be physical or biological? Biological could be the food. The food that we're eating right now, the chemicals that they're putting in our food to limit us and restrict us from doing certain things. The chemicals that they're putting in our food. Vaccinations could be. So these are like the biological and physical means to prevent us from doing something or limit us from doing something. But let me, I want to go to the end of page 9, where he says that force, rather than being utilized as the primary and exclusive means of exerting power over another, may serve more to reinforce or back up other forms of power. So he goes on to say that force is more effective in preventing or restricting people from acting than in causing them to act in a certain way. So he said that force itself is less effective as a means of power than often assumed. So he's saying that it's not the most effective means of getting someone to do something by doing it from physical force, doing it by, the physical or biological force. He's saying that the most powerful forms, I hate using the same word in the same sentence, but the most powerful forms of power would be to apply subtle forms of power. Because with force, if someone comes at you physically, you know that they're coming at you. So now you have you're going to face, or the person that wants power, you're going to face more opposition. But when you're controlled and don't know that you're being controlled, that's the most effective form of power.
Yeah, that's propaganda. That's why a lot of people, younger people and older people, don't recognize racism nowadays. That's why you get people say there's no racism, because they can go to a job or make a little money or whatever, or drive a car and things like that. That's what that speaks to, the manipulation of the mind, which is far more powerful than using force, you know. And it keeps people from, again, like you were saying, fighting back, you know, because they're not everybody's not as astute when dealing with psychology.
Yes.
And that's what Knowledge Born was. That was the point that the brother was trying to make. And his point is actually on page 11. Where
I was about to go into that.
Where Dr. Would you say Knowledge Born?
Yeah, I was about to go into that. I get it.
Yeah, you were just talking about that psychic violence.
Violence, yes.
You're saying psychic violence. And, you know, you want to read that, Brother Knowledge Born?
Real quick before y'all get there, on page 10, where it says Wartenberg further notes. I just wanted to read this really quickly. It says, force is uneconomic for a number of reasons. In the first place, it requires that the dominant agent make some physical effort in order to keep the subordinate agent from doing what she otherwise would do. As a result, maintaining the use of force requires a constant expenditure of energy by the dominant agent. So you see, they realize that, okay, we can either try to fight these African people physically, or we have to go about it a different way, because if, like you say, if we fight them physically, we have to continue to fight them physically. So we have to break them down. That's why they chose to, as brother was talking about, hit us mentally, because it's easier. You know, they can lay back and do that and just let the propaganda speak for itself. But let's let Brother Knowledge take us into that, since that was his point.
Yes. Yes.
All right. It says, I'm on page 11 under psychic violence. It says the most powerful obstacle against the liberation of African peoples from white domination and exploitation is not the ability of whites to use superior military or police firepower or their threat to use it against African insurgency, but but it is their ability to engage in unrelenting psychopolitical violence against the collective African psyche. The monopoly, it is the white monopoly on psychic violence and the devastating, ingenuous use of it against the minds of African peoples, which represents the greatest threat to African survival. Can I read that line one more time?
Please.
It is the monopoly, the white monopoly on the psychic violence and the devastatingly ingenuous use of it against the African peoples, this threat to African survival. So again, the diameter of your thinking. You see what I'm saying? It's just the same thing as a get a job mentality. Like everybody in my family worked until they died. You see what I'm saying? You know, another tactic, like we were talking about government, you know, was Section 8 housing. So Section 8 housing ensured that, you know, no brothers and sisters would own homes. So if you've been living in public housing or government housing for your own life, you wouldn't be a homeowner. So you don't have a stake in the land. You're seen as a useless eater. You see what I'm saying? So again, moving back to that same diameter, but you know, they're maximizing off of our ability to see ourselves from an African center. So you're only going to see yourself in the way that the European displays you. You see what I'm saying? It tells you what you are. So no, this resurgence of the African mind is so critical because we can move away from these norms that have been attributed to us as African people. You know, you see what I'm saying? You know, as far as, you know, what a sister is, what a brother is, what blackness is, all of these things that we're holding on to, and we're thinking that we have to have some type of ownership or stake in our life, you know, really are not even attributed to us. We're just on this rediscovery journey of who we are as African people. We've been taught that we are so many other things for so long that we have to take this opportunity to be able to look back, have that Sankofa moment of the mind, and be able to, you know, move forward in a righteous manner in the way that our ancestors intended to. So definitely with the psychology, because without this, with the psychology being dominated, you're not moving anywhere. You see what I'm saying? And you're going to have that goldfish memory in regards to yourself. Like you can make a stride and then a second later, you don't remember anything. That's right. You just observed within our family dynamic. You do something good today, and then the next day you forgot everything that you've done. You see what I'm saying? So that's militaristically how we're moving, psychologically, economically, and in all fronts, and it all stems from this root-based attack of psychic violence that's being employed.
And you know what, Knowledge Born, I thought about when I was reading this passage, I said, well, what ways are they violating our psyche? And the number one instrument is the educational process.
Absolutely.
The educational process. And then it's the media, the radio, the internet, television. So those are the ways that they have been psychologically assaulting us. I want to go down to the bottom of the page, and where it says that it says dominant whites have used words and symbols to violently and unrelenting attack oppressed blacks in 1,001 nefarious ways, including the projection of dehumanizing stereotypes and caricatures of them, the falsification of their history and culture, the miseducation of blacks, and the emerging chronic derisive media attacks on their morals, behavior, intelligence, ways of life, sexuality, physical features, motives, and values. And then he goes on to say that the false consciousness, self-alienation, and self-hatred are conjoining states of mind which motivate oppressed blacks to engage in continuing self-defeating, self-destructive assaults against their own interests and against themselves. And so, you know, basically I thought about the falsification of African consciousness, which is another book of Dr. Amos Wilson's that we definitely need to read. So it just goes to show you that our mentality, our consciousness has been shaped by different falsehoods. And as you said, Brother Knowledge Born, that we haven't even defined our reality. We define ourselves in terms of white people. We define everything that we know, everything. Our reality has been defined by them. And I think that's all I have right now.
Social
And even in that, go ahead, sis. I'm sorry.
No, I was just saying, to what sis was saying, Dr. Maat, that social engineering. You know, we're not even aware of how we've been trained. You know, many of us, you know, I mean, we're working to unravel all these things, but many of us are not even aware of these systems.
That's right.
Absolutely. So let's move on, y'all. I was trying to, you know, I wanted this to stick at 1 hour, but it looks like we're probably going to do an hour and a half, because I definitely want to knock out chapter 1 this week so that we can move into chapter 2 next week. So the next form of power is coercion. Power. So can someone read the definition or?
Sure. I like to read it.
Okay, sis.
The instrumental use of force or the threatened use of force by the power holder to attain the compliance of another is often referred to as coercion. Coercion is therefore a form of power. It is of the utmost importance to note, as did wrong, that a coercer may succeed without possessing either the capability or the intention of using force, so long as the power subject believes he possesses both.
That's right. Keep going.
That is, the coercive power of the power holder may rest significantly less or not at all on his actual capacity to harm the subject, but may rest more or less completely on the subordinate subject's belief that the power holder can do so.
That's right.
That's right. And so this, like, go ahead, sis.
That's I guess that's, you would call that like brainwashing. You know,
exactly.
You know, like when somebody kind of like, you know, they just kind of like, or, you know, like when they kind of like jump at you, like they're gonna hit you, and you run because you think they're gonna hit you, but they just like jumped at you, like making believe, going through the motion.
And then coercion is a little bit different. Coercion is in a sense where it's like, I'm going to hit you, but you'll never see it coming. You know, it's like, I'm not even going to jump at you. I'm just going to like be talking.
I'm not even going to jump at you.
Face. Like that's coercion, especially in the sense of coercion is power. So it's like when you coerce somebody, they don't know they're being coerced.
No,
they have no idea. That's the beauty in it. That's why it's so easy for manipulators to use that tactic, because you never see it coming.
Right, but you believe in your mind that they have power.
Yes.
So it's like you believe. It's like, it's kind of like, I'm going to act accordingly because I think that this person may do this or have the capability or the ability to do this. When in actuality, they may not. They may have the ability, you know, to cause.
Right. Okay.
Not. But
it's kind of like a kid who's in a situation with a bully, and it's like, say the bully, he's bigger than them, but he's never really physically hit them. But the kid has this perception that, well, he can hurt me. So
they just think because they're bigger that they
I'm just going to stay on my P's and Q's because I think that he can hurt me. So the bully may be the biggest pussy. Oh, excuse me. The bully may be the biggest chump ever. But being that this kid thinks that he's so tough, which most bullies are chumps, but that's what they use. They use coercion as power because people think that they have the ability to do X, Y, and Z to them when probably in actuality they don't.
Right. You want me to finish reading it, or are we moving on?
Oh, no. I just wanted to move to page 13, where Dr. Amos Wilson says that, he goes on to say that while the ability of the dominant agent to coerce the subordinate subject may rest heavily on the subject's exaggerated perception of the dominant agent's actual capacity, just like she said with the bully and the child analogy. I really like that, Sister Alima. He said to actually, agent's actual capacity to do harm equally and often of greater importance, the ability of the dominant agent to coerce the subject may rest on the subject's misperception and underestimation of his own capacity to successfully thwart the coercive or punitive actions of the dominant agent. So just going back to what Knowledge Born said about the self-concept, It says the often anemic self-concept of subordinate persons or groups, their low self-esteem and their ignorance and their actual strengths are more the causes of their subordination than is the actual strength of their oppressors. So sometimes we're coerced simply because we don't believe in ourselves, simply because we have a self-defeating mentality. And Dr. Amos Wilson says in the next paragraph that this self-defeating state of mind in blacks is the fundamental objective of white power and the keystone upon which the infrastructural facade of white power rests. So simply because we believe that they're so powerful. I remember before my grandmother transitioned in 2005, you know, I was on my Black Power kick. I've always been on my Black Power kick. And I was like, you know, Granny, one day I'm telling you, it's going to come to an end. I'm telling you, the Black man and woman, we were going to rise. I'm telling you, you're going to see the resurrection. And my grandmother at that time, she was probably in her late 60s, early 70s. And she looked at me and she said, Deanna, that white man will never, ever let Black people get ahead of him. That's what my grandmother said. So she believed, so that is a self, she already believed that we were defeated. You know, she said, this white man will never let us get ahead. And as long as we have that mentality and we perpetuate that mentality, we won't ever get ahead. You know, you get what I'm saying? And so it is that sometimes it's that self-defeating mentality. With the self-defeating mentality, we're like our own worst enemies because of our mentality, because of our self-concept. So that's all I have.
And that's another meaning, the identity crisis that's brought out and is caused of it. You know, that's the same way why you would stay in an abusive relationship. You see what I'm saying? Who else is going to want you? Who else? Because the end of it is, you know, we want white acceptance. That's the main crux of it. So because we want to be accepted so much that we'll subject ourselves to this type of treatment. You know, we'll stay in this type of condition, you know, under this type of rule. So the power of coercion is to have you do something to yourself, something of harm to yourself. You're not going to make a decision for your benefit. You're always going to make a decision for your detriment. That's coercion. You know, in law, it's called duress. You know, you made the statement under duress. So when you stand before the judge, they say you're making a statement of your own free will in the court and under no threat, coercion or duress, or no promises was made to you. So they use that type of word, you know, wordplay for you to indict yourself. You know, they don't indict you, you indict yourself, you know, by agreeing. You see, so our agreement and our compliance, that's another word that they use, compliance versus non-compliance. You see what I'm saying? So, you know, definitely in this case, you know, when we look at coercion, we're looking at the destruction of the ability to fight in your psyche, which manifests in your physical actions.
Yeah, that's beautifully stated.
Absolutely. 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 So the last thing that I wanted to add, because I love how Dr. Amos Wilson, when he compares and contrasts the different forms of power, he'll tell us the downfall or the con of using each power. So remember when Sister Alima read the con of using force as a power, he said, what was it, sis? Going back really, really quick. You said that, you said force is uneconomic.
That's right.
Said that it requires the dominant agent to make some physical effort in order to keep the subordinate agent from doing what he or she would otherwise. So it's saying that you have to use, it's constant expenditure of energy by the dominant agent. So the con of coercion on page 14, it says, despite its efficiency and productivity relative to force, the exercise of coercive power, like the exercise of force, may be expensive socially and politically costly and provoke resistance from those subjected to its application. All right. So it's saying, he's saying here that coercion is also, you know, a bit expensive with regards. And he goes on to say the relative inefficiency, counterproductivity, and costliness of exercising force and coercive power as a primary means. So we're not saying that we're not using it. He said we're not going to use it as a primary means, right? We'll use it as a tool here and there. But anyway, the relative inefficiency, counterproductivity, and costliness of exercising force and coercive power as a primary means for dominating other groups serve to motivate power-holding groups to develop more effective but less obvious or intrusive ways of exercising coercive force and power so as to reduce, if not eliminate altogether, the reactive resentment and resistance of their subordinate subjects. So this end is accomplished when power holders discover and utilize ways and means of obscuring or hiding the use of coercion by inducing misperceptions and misunderstandings among their subjects about whether they are actually being coerced, or being able or being subjected to a power play. All right. So Dr. Amos Wilson tells us that, hey, coercion is a form of power. It's not the most effective form of power, but it is another form of power. He's saying that we need to find that they sought to find subtle forms of power to keep down the resistance. You have a lot of Black people who are controlled. Millions of us. We're controlled, Sister Alima, and don't realize it. We think because we don't have, we're not on a plantation working from can't see to can't see, right? Or we think because we're not handcuffed to something, or because, hell, we're not behind what I call the G wall, because, I've been behind those walls. So because you're not physically behind the prison walls, that you're not being controlled, or there's no power there's no power over you, when in fact there are. They just different forms, more efficient, more cost-effective forms to control you. And so
that's the bottom line. That's why they decided to use different types of force, because, as you just said, it was too expensive to keep us shackled down. Like, look, we got to let these niggas go and put them to work in a real way and figure out some other stuff to still get their bread, because this is too much. We getting killed. Our wives is getting killed. Our husbands is getting killed. They revolting. They're not doing right. We got to use a different way. So that's why it says that coercive power is coupled with physical and biological power.
So let's move on to influence as power. We get down to the wire, y'all. We're halfway through the chapter, more than halfway through the chapter. So influence as power. So influence can be a form of power. Can somebody read the definition of that? Influence. What is influence?
Influence occurs when a person acts in compliance with the wishes or directions or suggestions of another, based on his sheer positive regard for love and admiration of the other, or based on desire to please or serve the other because of the other person's significance to him. Influence is achieved when the subject's behavioral compliance is attained without the influential party having to possess or use force, coercion, material rewards, or making appeals to authority. So this is the easy kind of power, where I just have power over you based off of who you think I am.
Right.
Mm.
Yeah.
And of course that's deep, but they have power over us in a lot of ways like that, just because a lot of us see them as so astute and so intelligent, and so refined. So when you view someone like that, almost putting them as a position of your creator, then you're going to allow them to have power over you in an influential way without even noticing.
Absolutely. That's like movie stars and musicians and things like that. People with a lot of money, people view them that way. They'll just, whatever they say, they usually follow them. That was, being a musician, you see that all the time with the whole groupie phenomenon. You don't even know this person, but because you perceive them as something else, you're gullible and you're able to be taken advantage of.
That's right. It breaks down influence's power. Says Wartenberg mentions two important types of influence with which we are familiar: rational persuasion and personal persuasion. In fact, in the first instance, the subject retains the use of his critical or rational faculties, but is led to reassess his understanding or perception. Is that? Oh, wait.
Awesome.
Somebody just joined us.
Calvin came in. Hey, Calvin, let me mute your mic.
Okay, is it muted?
No, I'm muted now.
Okay.
All right.
I was like, what is going on? Okay. So rational persuasion and personal persuasion. I'll just start over. He says, in the first instance, the subject retains the use of his critical or rational faculties, but is led to reassess his understanding or perception of a situation or of reality, or to accept as reasonable or correct the conclusions reached and recommendations suggested by the other as the result of the other's apparently logical argumentation or reasoning. In the second instance, the subject's behavioral compliance, the argumentation or demands of the other occur essentially because he wishes to satisfy the desires of the other as he perceives them to exist.
Wow. So one of them is personal persuasion.
And
Wow. And one is rational. So rational means, wow, so I have to reassess my understanding, okay, of what, you know, the situation or reality is.
Right. Or to accept as reasonable or correct the conclusions reached.
And recommended by someone else.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, so someone can influence me by influencing my rationale.
Exactly.
Or, yeah, my thought process, my rationale, or me just personally wanting to please them, the desire to satisfy them. And then this is what Knowledge Born was talking about right here, propagandistic persuasion, where the use of various media and forms of indoctrination techniques, the subject is influenced to accept certain beliefs or opinions, which lead him to think that he is acting in his own interest when this really is not the case. I have to bring this up. I have to bring up the homosexuality agenda.
Yeah, man.
I have a lot of people, and this is like, we're not gay bashing or nothing like that. What I'm saying is, I'm just presenting the fact. Years ago, when I was coming up in the 80s and 90s, you know, homosexuality, it wasn't accepted. Like if someone said I'm gay, people were like, oh. But now that it has been like glamorized and sensationalized, people are now more accepting of it. You see it in cartoons, you see it on popular shows like The Empire, what else? You hear it in music, you see it on rap music videos. So, you know, it says through media and forms of indoctrination techniques, it says the subject is influenced to accept certain beliefs and opinions. So now a lot of people, you know, because things that the media has been putting in your face, now you've come to accept certain behaviors. And that was just one, you know, that's just one thing. And I'm, like I said, this is not a sad, you know, a bashing session, but I'm just showing you how, you know, we as a culture, we as a people may not have accepted certain beliefs or opinions until the media constantly put it in our face. And then it's kind of like they normalize, you know, whatever the message is. So I know that's one thing. Pants sagging. I'll never understand why people expose the buttocks, but it has been
right. But
now it's just become the norm because you see it so much. So
right.
It's like we're accepting this stuff because
right.
of the media. And anyway, I just wanted to add that. Those are the things that came to mind with influence. So you can be influenced, you know, by the media to accept certain things, opinions, and beliefs. You got some people who accept democratic beliefs or republic beliefs, you know, simply because the media is constantly projecting this certain opinion or this certain belief. And so that's a form of influence. You're being influenced by propaganda. And so moving on to 16, I just want to add this quick note before we go into, I believe this is the fourth, or is this the fourth or the third?
Yeah, fourth one, competent and legitimate.
Okay, so we're getting ready to get into that. But before we move into that, I just want to read on page 16, where Dr. Amos Wilson says, influence is a more secure and hidden form of power in that the influenced subject complies with the demands of the power holder, either without questioning the role or motives of the power holder, or after being persuaded by the power holder's apparently logical argumentation. Consequently, influence as a type of power, as a type of rational, personal, propagandistic persuasion may serve to render the possession and exercise of other types of power unnecessary and more secure, or to obscure them altogether. Thus, influence may itself function as an exceedingly potent and subtle form of power. Influence. So then he goes on, I just want to end this paragraph. He says, only by choosing to accept and live by an Afrocentric frame of reference, where blacks escape the disempowering white influence and correspondingly enhance their own power. So we need an Afrocentric frame of reference so that we won't keep being influenced by these, I don't want to say crackers. I was getting ready to slip up, Sister Alima, but we're constantly influenced by these people because we don't have our own frame of reference. We have their frame of reference.
That's right.
We're constantly influenced by them. So we have to now adopt or live by an Afrocentric frame of reference. So before we move on, Brother Calvin, did you want to add anything? And W. Travis 42, did you want to add anything to the discussion?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, I've been really like doing a lot of reading and research well, let me just go ahead and put it out there. A lot of the stuff as far as homosexuality, the drug culture, the new age movement, I think a lot of that stuff came from Aleister Crowley out of a movement that he had put forth. So just to put that out there. So a lot of that movement that sprang up came from Aleister Crowley.
Gotcha.
So I mean, yeah.
Okay, Kenny.
Brother Travis?
Yeah, I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. My question is that who was successful in transforming the consciousness of Black people was through institutions like the Honorable Elijah Muhammad in the 1950s, 40s. It's a very old organization, but the mythology of telling Black people that the white man was the devil. I don't believe in little devils, but I'm saying is to get Black people to understand that they are a divine people, which we are. You have to I see a lot of the things that Dr. Amos Wilson is implementing, and I totally agree. But how can we effectively, collectively implement these without an institution? Because it is institutional racism that put us in this actual condition. So we have to have counter institutions that can deal with these particular issues of racism and white supremacy. How do we bring that forward?
I agree completely, brother, but I'm more than confident it's in the book. So being that we're only in the first chapter,
yes,
we'll get to that because I've skimmed through the table of content. He talks about it. So I don't want to jump the gun yet, since I feel like we're going to go over it later. But I do agree completely that in order to eradicate ourselves, we have to establish our own entities.
Absolutely. So moving on, the competent and legitimate authority as power. Competent and legitimate authority as power. Does someone want to read the definition of competent authority?
One of the brothers want to read it for us?
I got it. I read competent authority.
Okay.
Competent authority involves the achievement and exercise of social power derived from knowledge and skill, and where behavioral compliance is obtained from the subject in return for his receipt of some benefit or service awarded by the authority. So this is kind of what we see as, especially in the entertainment industry, how this is how it's being used, with the influence. So it's like, oh, okay, well, we hear one of the greatest fallacies in the world. Well, they're getting paid. You understand what I'm saying? So now we recognize that what we do, those knowledge and skills are valuable, but who are they being like, who's in receipt of this value? You see what I'm saying? So we got our best and our brightest. We got the doctors, the lawyers, the scientists. Who are they working for? You see what I'm saying? So the loyalty comes to who pays you. Just like whoever they running up and down the basketball court or the football field or wherever, they're loyal to those people. You see what I'm saying? Who allow them to eat and create a standard of living. So if you're dealing with nothing and then all of a sudden somebody comes up with something, this is how the missionaries were successful on the continent. You see what I'm saying? They were coming with bread. They came with bread. So if you got bread, you have food, we coming over there, we're eating. Okay, well, take this imagery right here. You see what I'm saying? Take this imagery, and with this, this is the compensation. You see what I'm saying? So they're benefiting off of creating a situation of destruction and then coming back with the solution. You see what I'm saying? So they create the conditions, that's the ghetto, that's the projects, there's all of these things that we abhor, and then they say, okay, this is your way out. So in return, you have to be, loyal. So this is use of competent authority being represented under the guise of we're going to have them for life.
Competent authority seems to fall in line with a little bit with influence as power, because it's in relation to the subject obeys the directives of the authority out of belief in the authority's superior competence or expertise. You know what I mean? So it's like, I believe in your competency, or I believe that you have the ability to do X, Y, Z. So therefore, I will allow you to have power over me because I see you as something important.
Exactly. Right? And then it seems like it also says that the subject's belief, it says that it defines competent authority as authority that rests solely on the subject's belief in the superior knowledge or skill. So I believe, or I'm giving you this power, I'm being subordinate to you because I think that you possess some sort of knowledge or skills. And I think that it's not that you've demonstrated that you possess this knowledge or skills, but I believe that you possess a certain level of knowledge and skills, and that's why I'm going to acquiesce to you, simply because I believe that you. So it seems like with competent authority, we're talking about knowledge and skills, that because I believe that you possess, some knowledge and skills, I guess, in a particular area or field, then I'm going to acquiesce to you simply because I believe that you have knowledge and skill. And he goes on to say, he says, he further contends that the competent authority is a power relation in which the subject obeys directives of the authority out of the belief in the authority's superior competence or expertise to decide which actions will best serve the subject's interests or goals. So it seems like it's based on me just thinking you have superior knowledge, skill of something, and that's why I'm going to acquiesce to you. And one thing that Dr. Amos Wilson mentions on page 17, he says European Americans monopolize the positions of competent authority in addition to monopolizing the means of certifying and delegating such authority. So we go to these institutions, a lot of people be like, I'm not going to college because it's the white man's college, or they'll say it's the white man's degree, right?
Yep.
I hear what they're saying, because ultimately we're treating him like he's the authority. You get what I'm saying? It's kind of like I'm going to him as the authority to certify my abilities. So I kind of get where people are coming from with that argument, but it says right here that they have monopolized the positions of competent authority in addition to monopolizing the means of certifying or legitimating and delegating such authority.
Right.
So
institution.
Right. It's because I'm going through their institutions, so now they're certifying my abilities. You get what I'm saying?
Right.
Because I think they possess the superior knowledge or the superior skills, and so I'm allowed to then
erroneous knowledge that they've turned into like the end all and be all, but it's basically erroneous.
Exactly. Sister Alima, the legitimate authority, sis.
Legitimate authority refers to a power relation in which the power holder possesses an acknowledged right to command and the subject an acknowledged obligation to obey. The source, rather than the content of any particular command, endows it with legitimacy and induces willing compliance on the part of the person to whom it is addressed. So legitimate authority is definitely like the judicial system, the police, doctors, teachers, because they have legitimate authority,
Exactly. And that's what I thought about. It said, to further elaborate, it says authority can be said to be legitimate to the extent that it conforms to established rules, to the extent to which the rates used to justify it are based on shared beliefs and norms and are based on the express consent of the subject, i.e., on the extent to which the subject consents to the particular relations of power which the exercise of such authority requires. So like you say, we think that teachers and police officers, judges, pastors, or whomever are legitimate authorities simply because we have accepted certain beliefs and certain social norms. And so, it says on page 18, interestingly, as Wrong notes, submission to legitimate authority is widely regarded as voluntary and based on consent. And I think Knowledge Born, or one of you all, talked about how when you go to court, they'll ask you, like, are you doing this on your own free will, blah, blah, blah. So it says, is widely regarded as voluntary and based on consent. So it's like when we go to court and they're sentencing us to something, we're consenting to that.
Right.
You know, you say like we're really consenting to that authority because we think that it's legitimate based on our beliefs and based on our norms. So it says wrong note, submission to legitimate authority is widely regarded as voluntary and based on consent rather than coercion. And yet, and I think it is coercion because we believe that they have the power to do these things to us.
Right.
So we
keep reading that sentence, and that's why it feels like coercion.
Yes, and it says, and yet at the same time, it's felt to be mandatory and obligatory.
That's
we
right.
must keep in mind that the legitimate authority and the power relations it entails are based on the acceptance by those who submit to it of certain beliefs, values, rules, modes of giving consent. So we're consenting to it. So when you say when the judge is sentencing you to 5 years in prison, and they ask you, you know, do you understand or have anybody influence you? You're consenting to their authority. Really, right. That's what that's telling me.
In the next paragraph, I had highlighted that legitimate authority is more efficient than coercive or induced authority, and that it minimizes the need for maintaining means of coercion in constant readiness, continual surveillance of power, subjects, and regular supplies of economic or non-economic rewards. For these reasons, naked, that is coercive power, always seeks to clothe itself in garments of legitimacy. Or as Franz Newman puts it even more strongly, those who wield political power are compelled to create emotional and rational responses in those whom they rule, including them to accept implicitly or explicitly the commands of the rulers.
And then another thing that spoke volumes to me is on page 19. He says rules, beliefs, and consent are manufactured. I'm gonna say that again. Rules, belief, and consent are manufactured by those in power to justify, legitimate, and serve their interests. So all of these things are made up, you know, for the sole purpose it's made up to the sole purpose to serve their interests, not ours. Our rules, our beliefs, and our consent have been manufactured. So then Dr. Amos Wilson goes on to say the illegitimacy of white American power is founded on illegitimacy of its original sins, genocide, theft of property, and enslavement. So their rule, their power, the power that we acquiesce to is illegitimate. It was illegitimately given. So I actually highlighted the entire paragraph below that, which says the occupancy of property, development of a hierarchical division of labor, or the establishment of a command structure, authority structure can occur, and historically frequently has occurred, as forcible appropriation, exclusion, or subjection, which takes place in violation of existing rules outside of them. Such usurpations cannot be legitimate. However, the resulting power relations typically becomes solidated and perpetuated through the establishment of rules which underpin and give legal form to the original usurpation. It says from that time on, subsequent positions of power come to be derived from the rules in the same way those rules originate through custom or agreement. Although the memory of the original usurpation may be kept alive, with the passage of the time, the issue of the rules of legitimacy becomes less of a question of their origin than one of the ongoing character of the relationship they embody and the nature of the requirements they impose. So I thought about the branches of when I read this, I thought about how they came over here, took the land from somebody, right? Set up shop. They had the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution. They set up branches of the government. And so we've been under this for centuries now, right? So we think it's legitimate because it's been going on for so long. So we think that what they're doing is actually legitimate. It is not. Everything that they've done has been illegitimate. But again, like Dr. Amos Wilson says in the first sentence, he said because of the historical, he said because it has occurred historically and frequently, right? The acts of forcible appropriation, exclusion, or subjection, which take place in violation of existing rules, or outside of them. So we accept it. We accept it because things have always been what they are. When in actuality, there's nothing legitimate about what they're doing at all.
Right. It's all lies. It's all a bunch of lies.
And we submit to it. We submit to it because we look at them as a competent and legitimate authority.
That's right.
I'm on page 26. We got like 6 more pages and we out. We're done.
Okay.
Anything else you guys want to add to the legitimate authority? Page 20 to 21.
No.
Reading what I have, but it looks like reiteration.
I think I got like a question / comment. I think the reason why it continues to go on is because they prop these different ideas up in the educational system, in their institutions for it to continue. But I think the reason why things never change is because we don't understand the rules. You know, how they have us submitting, and it doesn't seem like they could directly do anything to you without repercussions. You get what I'm saying? So, which is why they forcing you to do certain type of stuff, and it always calls for you to be in a submissive state to go along with. If not, then you're forced to submit. But I don't really think that they could directly do anything to you without repercussions, which is why they need your cooperation.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Exactly, brother.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that.
If you looked at the whole thing with Colin Kaepernick, if everybody in the NFL took a knee, what could they do? They gonna kick everybody out?
Right.
No. You know what I'm saying? So that is like, you know, what the brother was speaking about. It's like, or you had if everybody did the same thing, their system would fall apart. You know,
Absolutely. Like she said, the system will fall apart, even with regards to the court, the judicial system. If they count on people pleading out, they count on plea deals. If everybody that got arrested said, I'm going to trial, they would not be able to maintain.
To work for the system.
Sis, can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Yeah, I was saying that I agree with what you said. That they wouldn't be able to maintain, you know, that system, that NFL. If all of the black players, given that the NFL is 70%, if all of the black players said, look, I'm not playing, and no black players played for them, we would shut it down. And the same thing with the judicial system. If every black person or brown person that said, look, I want to go to trial, the system would fall. They don't have enough people to try all of those cases. So they count on people taking plea deals. Like Calvin said, to some degree, they need our cooperation to maintain the system, to maintain the system. They need us to submit.
Exactly.
They need us to submit. I remember one time, and I'm sharing something very personal with you all. When I was incarcerated, remember, people who are familiar with my story, they know that I got caught up in a whole marijuana conspiracy. And I remember when I was in a detention center here in Baltimore, in Towson, and I was talking to a prison, well, it was a detention center, so I guess you would say a CO. And I noticed that they didn't carry guns. And I said to him, I said, how can you feel comfortable, working around criminals without a gun? And he said, you know what? He said, we count on you guys not doing anything. He said, it's only a handful of us who come to work, and it's hundreds of you. He said, he said, you all really have the power, but we count on you guys not utilizing it.
Right.
People could really overthrow, I remember being on a compound with 700 women, 700, and it was maybe 20 guards. 20. They count on you to cooperate. That's how they can continue to control you. You have to cooperate. And I just wanted to share that with you. I was just thinking about it.
Yeah, that's powerful. That's how severe brainwashing it is. How propaganda. The first indoctrination to me is school. That's the first step in indoctrinating us.
Absolutely.
Well, speaking of, we might as well move into manipulation as power.
I figured.
I think this is the last one.
Yes.
Yes.
Sis Camille, you want to read the definition for us?
Sure.
Before we do that, I just want to add that Dr. Amos Wilson charges us as Black people. I'm reading page 20. He said we need to critically examine the origins and functions of the rules, morals, value, customary attitudes and behavior, common perspective, and folk ways they have been convinced to accept. We have been convinced to accept as the result of white America physical and coercive impositions, ideological propaganda, and conditioning procedures. He says uncritical acceptance of Eurocentric rules, morals, customs, and so on by African Americans hides from them the fact that despite the norms and values they share with white Americans and which serve to legitimate the American social, political, economic system, white America possesses the preponderant and dangerous power advantage with them. So he's saying we need to take a critical look at these rules, at these morals, at these standards, at these behaviors.
That's what Brother
as they relate.
is saying.
Yes, we had to look at it. He said uncritical acceptance of these things will allow them to continue to possess a dangerous power advantage over us. So like you said, let's go into manipulation of power, because I think that in page 20 to 21, he then goes on to talk about how, there's this push for a race neutral society and a colorblind society. And he says in these pages that even though we may be so-called which we're really not, but let's say that we were in fact in a race neutral or colorblind society, Dr. Amos Wilson is saying, wait a minute, they had a 350-year advantage of you. So there's still a power differential that exists between Blacks and whites, where this power differential favors them.
Right.
So he's saying if we're in a colorblind or race neutral society, they still have power over us, and we still need to adjust that power differential. So he talks about that on page 20 and 21. So let's go to page 22, manipulation as power.
Manipulation as power. Manipulation involves to elicit certain desired responses from his subject while manipulated.
Sis, you're breaking up.
Huh?
Oh,
You're breaking up.
Am I better now?
yes.
Yeah, so can you start with the definition again so we can make it clear to those who are listening?
Okay, manipulation involves the attempt by the manipulator to elicit certain desired responses from his subject while concealing his efforts to do so. In this way, the manipulator seeks to constrain, restrict, or prevent certain undesirable actions on the part of his subject or to subtly direct his subject to behave in certain desired ways outside his subject's knowledge and awareness. Manipulation involves a more efficient exercise of power than force, coercion, and influence, because it is less likely to evoke resistance since the subject is unaware of the effort to influence him or may think that the manipulator is exercising his influence to achieve an end desired by both the manipulator and the subject himself, when in actuality the subject is being influenced toward an end which may be detrimental to himself and beneficial only to his manipulator. Thus, the manipulated subject may be led to perceive his own responses and behavior as expressions of his own free will and choice. Wow. Commonly, manipulation is achieved by skillfully presenting information, rewards, and deprivations in ways which shape the consciousness and behavior of the subject and motivates him to freely choose to act in ways compatible with the concealed intentions of his manipulator.
The invisible hand.
Yeah.
But that is the invisible ruling hand. That's what that is, manipulation. So you're being manipulated and don't even understand how you're being manipulated. And I thought, when I thought about that, when I read this passage, I thought about black on black violence. You know how people will say, "Oh my goodness," down in the, the urban communities. I don't like saying ghettos. I don't like saying, in the city, right? In the urban communities, people will say, "Look at those black people killing each other, and look at this." But we never talk about that invisible hand, because we think that we're acting on our own accord. When we go out and you kill your brother or you rob your brother, but we never think about the circumstances that were created for such behavior. You get what I'm saying? And I love how he said that manipulation is achieved by skillfully presenting information, rewards, but wait a minute, and deprivations, right? And ways to shape the consciousness and behavior of the subject. So we think that these things are just happening because these people are choosing to do this or choosing to do that, and they're acting on their own accord, when in actuality, there's a ruling hand that has created certain circumstances for this, certain circumstances that engendered or fostered this type of behavior, right?
Yes, neglect.
And I remember the used to say that the white man was the master manipulator. I remember they used to say that they are the master manipulators, and they truly are, because they manipulate a situation and then they stand back and say, look at what's going on. But they don't talk about the circumstances that they don't talk about how they created the circumstances that breeded such behavior, such degenerate behavior. All right, that's potent.
Masters of deception. They're masters of deception. They create the situation, just like you said. All depravity is manufactured. Poor educational system, lack of resources, neighborhood, all that stuff is created on purpose because they know that there's gonna be a certain reaction. So therefore, now they can fill up their prisons and make money off of that. Or they know that there's going to be a certain amount of people that are killed, and so forth and so on. So they're going to keep creating situations where they can control you because you're too busy trying to survive to actually understand what's being done to you.
Exactly, sis. On page 23, I wanted to point out here, it says, wrong further notes that manipulation may involve the most dehumanized, and as far as we are concerned, perhaps the most dehumanizing exercise of power of all, because unlike the exercise of obstructive physical force, visible coercive and authoritarian power, where the intent of his adversaries and the source of assault and frustrations are known to the subject, manipulation is a form of power that cannot be openly resisted by the power subject, since he is unaware of the power holder's intent or even sometimes of his existence. So it's saying that they feel that this is one of the worst forms because you don't see it coming.
Yeah.
So I guess that goes to, I should correct myself, because when I was talking about coercion, and the more that I think about it, coercion, in a sense, you can kind of see it, maybe, unless the coercer is just that good. But it's more so manipulation, where you cannot see it whatsoever. But for me, I don't know why. For me, it's like one and the same. I think I'll go back and read his definitions again and see how he broke them down, but they seem very similar.
Yes.
What I was thinking of is the black leadership. It's perceived as a leadership that is going to operate in the interests of black people, but it's almost like a fail-safe mechanism politics. Even though you have a black face, it operates in the interests of white people. I was thinking about example of Barack Obama, the Freddie Gray case, how you can have a black mayor, a black judge, and still, you can't prosecute this police department, this racist Gestapo police department, because of the fail-safe mechanisms that's in place. But you have black leadership, so-called black leadership in place, but it still operates in the interests of white people.
Exactly, brother. Facts.
That's facts.
Anybody else want to add on? All right.
Okay. So we could move on. So they said that this is the most, most subtle and most dehumanizing form of power. Because like you said, we don't know that it exists. So we don't know that it exists. How can we fight back? Exactly. Dr. Amos Wilson closes his chapter, and I'm still on page 23 at the bottom paragraph. He says, only by basing their behavioral orientation on their own African history, culture, values, interests, consciousness, and identity can Blacks prevent their behavioral manipulation by self-serving whites and act under the influence of their own self-generated enhanced power. So then he closes this chapter with a summary of white domination and subordination. And he begins by defining what social domination is. And it says that social domination occurs when the power of one personal group over another is exercised in a systematic manner. Okay, key word, systematic, at the expense of the dominated person or group. And then he gives us the definition, Wardenberg's definition of domination, which refers to the power that one social agent has over another in situations in which the power is exercised by dominating social agent repeatedly, systematically. So domination doesn't mean when something happened once. Dr. Amos Wilson is saying domination is when something happens repeatedly and that is systematically. So it happens over and over and over, and there's a system in place. It's a systematically. So there's a system in place, okay, that where am I? Because I think I lost my place. But it's a system. It happens repeatedly and systematically. And it says to the detriment of the dominated agent. So it says the concept of domination therefore refers to a specific manner of exercising power. All right. So it says domination refers not to a single exercise of power, but to a relationship between the two social agents that is constituted by the existence of a power differential between them. So, okay. Sister, can you go ahead and summarize the rest of 24 and 25?
Okay, well, I had at the top of 25, this top paragraph, white domination of Blacks is to a significant degree covered over by ideology, beliefs, which Blacks have conditioned by whites to unwittingly accept. To this degree, their domination and powerlessness is self-imposed. Blacks obscure their unnecessary domination by whites and contribute to that domination by their own gullibility and too ready acceptance of Eurocentric ideology and their obscure willingness to think and act only within the confines of white-generated ideas, social definitions, relations, and ethics, not often honored by whites themselves. Hence, the minds of Blacks are used to forge the links of their own mental chains.
Ooh.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of deep.
That was very powerful. And then I have underneath that highlighted, when Africans and Americans and all over the world choose to critically examine the received ideas and biased perceptions of reality imposed on them by Europeans and choose to know reality for what it is, to create themselves through gaining a thorough knowledge of self, knowledge of the world, and studying and acquiring power, they will then have attained the key to their own liberation. I thought that was extremely powerful. And any closing, does someone want to elaborate or expound on that? You? Okay, so I'm going to go ahead.
You're breaking up. I had this paragraph. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can everybody hear me?
Yes, sis.
Okay, everybody's break. Okay. The use of sheer unadorned physical force as a means of dominating Blacks has been used by whites from the 16th century to the present moment. It has assumed many forms, from war, captivity, lynching, beating, torture, mob violence, police brutality, and oppression, to martial law and the like. The threatened use of physical, police, and military force stands behind white power in all its deceptive metamorphoses, but more effective and deeply enduring than the use of physical force or the coercive threat to use it in maintaining the domination of white over Black is a long-term use by whites of harshly unrelenting psychic violence against the collective Black persona. For this violence more effectively neutralizes Black opposition to and possible overthrow of white domination than the preponderance of white military might.
Yes.
Yeah, psychic violence hobbles the most powerful of human weapons, the human mind and its productive creativity, ingenuity, innovativeness, and vision. Moreover, it hobbles the human capacity to develop and press into service the social identity, social consciousness, unity, and solidarity, and the cooperative social spirit, which combined empowers a race to overcome impossible odds posed by other hostile and apparently more powerful races of men.
Says continue. This is the last paragraph, and I have this highlighted. So please,
I did too, all of it.
Oh yeah, psychic violence.
Go ahead.
Psychic violence makes the victim. Huh?
No, go ahead, sis. Keep on reading. We're gonna have this paragraph highlighted. This is the last. This is the last paragraph in the chapter. So go ahead, sis. Go ahead. I want you to read it because this is powerful.
Psychic violence makes the victimized individual or group vulnerable to the soft, yet ultimately more treacherous and effective forms of social domination. Social coercion, influence, manipulation, allegedly legitimate and competent authority, and ideological hypnosis. Nothing of the wounds occasioned by white instigated psychic assaults against the collective African mind, body, and spirit can enable African peoples to regain their liberation. A deep and fundamental transformation of the subordinated African psyche via the steadfast acquisition of an African-centered consciousness and identity will provide the social, psychological, and if need be, military power tools for breaking through the imprisoning walls of white supremacy. Liberating African-centered consciousness and identity must be included. African this will must be informed by a profound knowledge of the means of acquiring and of the exercising of power, as well as a strategic and tactical knowledge of the enemy's power. To an examination.
These factors we will turn.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying about knowing them.
Yes.
You gotta know. Well, we don't study them. You know, I mean, we study the propaganda that comes out, you know, we partake in all of that, but the actual why they're putting this stuff out there and why we're in the position we are, we don't have a grasp on.
Because we think that it's enough just to simply hate them and to know that they're our enemy. We think that that's enough, but how do you defeat someone if you know nothing about them? Like, I can know that you hate me all day long, but if I don't know why, then how will I ever be able to defeat you? Because at the end of the day, it's psychological.
Absolutely.
It's psychological. So we have to learn how they think. We have to learn how they move. Especially people think they're going to try to intertwine or overthrow something here in America, or even if you don't think you're going to overthrow it, but try to build a nation within this nation, you're going to have to learn them because you're going to have to intertwine with them somehow.
Well, yeah, you're going to have to keep them from, from
coming to kill you. So, yeah.
You know what? And I think that Sean P. is in the building. I believe that he's in the chat room. He was reading a book, and I'm thinking of, we're talking about, I guess, tools to study them. And I know there's a book, I believe it's called Iceman something. If someone in the chat.
Iceman Inheritance, probably. Michael Bradley.
Yeah, Iceman Inheritance.
Iceberg Inheritance. I heard that
Iceman.
Yeah, that's right, Michael Bradley.
My bad. But I think that I heard that that's a wonderful book. Like, if you're trying to understand Europeans, who they are and how they think. And also, Marimba Annie has a book, Yoruba.
Yeah, I was just about to say that gives you about 3 months ago, and the whole way she breaks them down from their psychology, how they developed in Europe under the conditions that they, the conditions that they lived under, just all these systems that we were just talking about, putting laws because they say so. It's like more or less, I'm white. I'm white and I say so. So therefore, I say I'm going to maim you, kill you until.
And what happens? I totally agree with what you're saying. What's consistent? I'm sorry, sister. Go ahead.
No, I was just wrapping it up with basically how she kind of put their whole psychological and their fear of being less than, which is a true reality. They just have, they're just a more ruthless people than we are. We came from we're the sun people. We had abundance. We weren't, starving. We didn't have to kill. We weren't killing one another to the degree that they survival. So they were already like battle hardened when they ran across us, So, there was nothing for, and plus they also, being one of nature, as she was explaining in her book, they basically, they had to put together a plan for their future, coming from such harsh conditions. So their thing was to take over the world. We were trying to be one with nature and share with the world. They wanted to control and own the world, and they put all these things into place to do just that. And they're on code as far as, they might fight amongst one another, but when it comes to,
maintaining power,
yeah, maintaining white supremacy,
yeah, they're on the same.
Yeah, they come on, they get right together on that one. Yeah, that's a great book. That's a read, like this book here, Blueprint for Black Power. I mean, it's about 500-600 pages.
Oh yeah, well, we'll make sure that we get to that one too, because like you say, it's essential for us to also study, their mentality, their mind. And I love how at the end of this chapter, Dr. Amos Wilson said that we need a steadfast diet, a steadfast acquisition of the African-centered consciousness and identity, right? If we want to break through the imprisoning walls of white supremacy, so not only do we need to, we need a steadfast diet of knowledge of self, we also need to study their minds, study the knowledge of their power, and then we need to study what is power, how to acquire it, and also how to exercise our power. Brother, I know that you wanted to say something, so go ahead and share your thoughts, and then we're going to go ahead and close out.
I'm just seeing something real consistent with Marimba Ani and Dr. Amos Wilson. Marimba Ani uses the word asili. She talks about the seed, the essence of the culture. To get back to the value system, the centeredness of the people. Dr. Amos Wilson is taking it back to the African centeredness. It's the same system I'm saying, is that to really get us unified, we have to get back into, like they're reiterating, African value system, a way in which we are in our culture and in our spiritual systems. That'll break down a lot of the Eurocentric ideologies that I'm seeing in our people. I kind of see where he's going with that. That's what I would say.
Yeah, I would agree. Because there used to be a time we didn't really listen to white people like we do now.
Right.
So I think their propaganda machine is even more, insidious. The system is very, and the tentacles are far-reaching.
Indeed.
So I think we have to be aware of that to, combat the insidious, them trying to eradicate that, because that's why they always say stuff like, we're all the same, and those are like, that's trick words to me.
Exactly.
To get you to drop your guard, and to partake in what they want you to partake in. While another trick they use.
Seriously.
So these are white supremacy, and I mean, they're the ones that make the laws against it. So their people are fighting them against it while they're pushing it on us.
Dr. Maat, you ready to wrap it up?
Yes. I'm ready to wrap it up, sis. So next week, what is the next chapter? Could you read the title of the next?
2 is the basis of power, organization, and ethnic resources.
Oh man. So okay. So we're going to go through this next week, chapter 2. And as I stated to you, Sister Alima, via text, I am fully committed for 31 weeks.
Me too.
To knocking down this book. And so we're going to be here every Sunday. We said from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. So I guess Sister Alima and I, during the week, we'll figure out a way where we can shorten
it. Yeah.
Yeah, so but it's just a lot of information.
It's a lot.
And it's kind of like you don't want to skip over anything.
Right.
You know, there were a lot of things that stood out, and I think that we were just trying to get everything in, and so we went from 7 p.m. to almost 9 p.m. So Sister Alima and I would try to figure out a way to kind of shorten these meetings. But the panel, do anybody have anything else to say? I'm all tapped out.
Me too. I'm tired.
Yeah, I'm tapped out. And I'm looking forward to reading chapter 2 of the book. And are there any other? Does anyone have any last words for the listening audience?
Nobody's gonna watch Game of Thrones?
Yes.
I've never seen this episode. I've never seen
Game of Thrones. They killed one of my dragons. Oh man.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm just mad Power not coming on, so I'm going to.
it's not coming on.
Not tonight.
What?
No.
I thought the season finale was supposed to
It's
be
next
tonight.
week.
Oh, okay. That's what I was in my mind. I'm like, shoot.
Yeah, I
they
thought
talking
so.
about-
But all the people that got it on demand, they couldn't watch it earlier because they said it's not till next week. But that's right, it's not. So yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah, the little girl got killed in that.
Yeah,
in the
they
last
killed
season.
Raina. Oh my God, I was crying like that was my little cousin or something.
Oh, that guy was heartless,
They
man.
came out of nowhere.
Like,
I wanted Tariq
Shoot
to
a
get
little
shot.
kid. Oh my goodness.
They should have shot Tariq. I'm sorry, I don't mean no harm, but he should.
That's that self-hate you talking about right there.
Right. All right. So I don't know what I'm gonna do now that Power is. I might get caught up on Queen of the South.
So you know they gonna say we not conscious now. We up here talking about Power. Like, how you go from talking about the great Amos Wilson, now y'all talking about Power? How about Bill? I'm sorry.
That
Hey, I
pathology.
can quote Dr. Amos Wilson in his book, The Developmental Psychology of the Black Child. He said, not the nature of what you watch. He said it's the frequency. He said chronic consumption of television and radio. That's what breaks your concentration and alters your stuff. You know, he said it's not really the nature of what you watch. So anyway, that's in Developmental Psychology in the Black Child. And we're gonna also read that book. So we're going to go, Sister Alima and I decided that we're going through all of the works of Dr. Amos Wilson. And after him, we'll pick another scholar, and we'll go through all of that scholar's work. And so, you know, again, we're both fully committed to this book club, The Resurgence of the African Mind. Please meet us here every Sunday from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you need the book Blueprint for Black Power, hit up Sister Alima or inbox me on my new name on Facebook is Deanna Bailey, since they deactivated my account. But look for me, DEANNA Bailey, BAILEY. If you send $43 to info@EdAnime Productions, that's EDANIME Productions with an S.com. If you send me $43 via PayPal, I'll make sure that I shoot or send you the book Blueprint for Black Power, and it will be autographed by Brother Sababu, who is the editor and publisher of Blueprint for Black Power, and also Dr. Amos Wilson's former business partner in the building of African Global Info Systems. So hit me up. Love you guys. Any other words, Sister Alima?
No.
Black African power.
Peace and love, family.
Peace and love.
So tell.
Hotep.